Greetings, everybody. I want to welcome you here to the Prog Monster. My name is Murph. I am the host of this show. This is a show dedicated to progressive rock and other forms of rock music. So, feeling a little sick today. I recorded this morning's video last night, but when I got up this morning, I was not really in serious headache, serious stomach ache. Couldn't even move, actually, for a long period. In the last couple of hours, I've kind of got myself up and doing stuff now, so it's around 2:30. Decided that with the light being pretty good outside today, I decided I'm going to do a natural light one here, and for the series we're doing tonight, which is a new series that we're starting called A Near Perfect Start. So this is a series, of course, that it was Ben's idea, and we discussed it, and basically he said, let's do something where we talk about the first 3 albums by a band. And we'll try to I picked 6 bands that I think these first 3 albums were really quite good. But to come up with this, I looked through almost all of the band's discographies, and then, what I discovered is that there's a lot out there that there's one of those 3 starting albums that I don't think quite makes it to be good enough to do a series like this. And then there's quite a few of them who I've loved their first couple of albums, or their second and third album, or their first and third album, but for some reason I didn't listen to that other album. So of the 3 albums, there might be one in there that I didn't really listen to, so we can't really give it that kind of a near perfect start when you haven't really listened to the album much. There's quite a few bands like that. I was surprised how many bands that I've been listening to that I like, that I didn't get one of those albums in there. Generally speaking, it's usually either the third album, because I've worked my way from the beginning to the top, or it's the first album because I never got it, or something like that usually is what's occurred. So I would say that's eliminated a good 50% of the bands that I could have considered for this. Then there's a few in there where I, for whatever reason, I didn't take to one of the albums, or I didn't like one of the albums, or in some cases I didn't like a couple of the albums. But for the most case, it's usually one of them that I didn't really like. Most often, probably the debut album, because it's usually different from the other albums in some way, right? Or they haven't got that sound that I like yet. And that eliminated quite a few bands as well. So then we were left with maybe about 20 bands who I liked the first 3 albums. So what I did is the ones that I thought that had masterpieces, or ones I put through immediately. Then we got down to like the 5th and 6th spot. So the 5th spot I decided to give to a particular band just because I liked all 3 of the albums, even though I hadn't had one for a while, but I liked all 3 of them. So I put that band in. And then the 6th spot was really difficult because there was at least 6 bands in there that I thought, these are, like, in the case of some of them, there was 2 or 3 of them that I liked all 3 of the albums, but the other band, one of the albums I wasn't as crazy about, but the other 2 I absolutely adored. I had to weigh that. So then I came up with the idea that in the case of the band we're going to do today, I really adore the second and third albums. They're among my favorite albums by them. The first one I liked a lot initially when I first started listening to it many, 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 many years ago. And over time, it just hasn't aged as well as the rest of their discography. So it's kind of dropped, but I decided that it hadn't dropped enough to not put it in here. So there was a couple of bands that I had considered to put in here, but one of them I didn't. I liked all 3 of the albums, but not nearly as much as the second and third album by this band. So I dropped that one. And then the other one, I've only started listening to the third album, so I really couldn't make that comparison, even though I think it's really good. I just didn't want to put it in there because I wasn't as familiar with the album. So having explained all that, and that took a bit of time, I wanted to explain to people that that's why some bands that they think that I like should be in there right away, but they may have an album or two in there that I just never listened to. But so the band I chose for today, and I picked all 6 of the bands we're going to do, but I put them in an order too. So the one I like the most will go on the last day, and then the one I like the second most will go on the second last day, so on down to today, which is the first day. And the album stack I choose will surprise some people that they're in 6th spot here. But they had to be on here just for that reason, for the reasons I said. And so we're going to go with Rush and their first 3 albums. This one, their debut album, which doesn't have Neil Peart on it. But I don't have a problem with John Rutsey. I think he's good. Not as good as Neil Peart, but still good. The second album, Rush's Fly By Night, Peart's first album. And then their third album, I considered their first really, even though Fly By Night had some prog on it, this one is really crossed the line, is now more prog than anything else, I think. So just discuss the 3 albums. So this album was the one I had the difficulty with because I liked this album a lot when I was younger. But over time, it's gradually drifted away from me. I don't listen to it nearly as much as I once did. And so I listened to it recently, and there are still some songs on here I love to hear. Finding My Way, In the Mood, sorry, I was drawing a blank there for a second. In the Mood, Before and After, and Working Man. I like all those tracks. The other tracks that kind of the middle tracks, I guess, Need Some Love is okay as well. But the other 3, Take a Friend, Here Again, What You're Doing, I don't really listen to those tracks much, or I kind of blank out when they're on. What You're Doing was one of the tracks off of this album that I never really cared for. It kind of sounded too Zeppelin-ish, like almost an attempt to be a Zeppelin, and I didn't really like it, so I never really warmed up to that track. The rest of them I've had varying degrees of liking and loving. Working Man, of course, I think is the best track on the album, although Finding My Way has aged the best of all the tracks on the album, so that's the reason why I decided after listening to it, it's still got enough good power in here to maybe make a low 1 rating. High 2, low 1 rating. So it was the reason why I decided to put them in, because of that album. The second album, this was never going to be an issue. This is a masterpiece album, a huge jump up for me for Rush. Also my first ever fully listened to Rush album, even though I didn't own it. I had rented it from the library and played it a lot at first, and of course, instantly fell in love with some of the tracks on here, Anthem being one. Anthem is still one of my favorite tracks, one of the best killer Rush tracks maybe of all time. And then you've got Bytor and the Snow Dog, another one of those. To me, this is really the cross into progressive rock, maybe progressive metal. Yeah, I wouldn't say it was a metal, but it's definitely a hard rock song. Lots of really good sounds in this. The guitar tone is fantastic. The noises that Alex makes with his guitars are add a lot of depth to this particular song. The drumming is fantastic. Geddy's voice is great. The bass, there's just nothing wrong with this song. It's one of my favorite songs by Rush. And so those 2 are the big 2. And then you got the bottom 2. In the end, not in the end, sorry. Where is it? Rivendell is kind of the bottom song. I don't dislike this song. I know a lot of people don't really like it. It's kind of different for Rush, but I didn't mind it. It was a little bit of a breather, I think, and was interesting in its own right. Then you got the kind of, to me, the middle songs, Best I Can, Beneath, Between, Behind, and In the End. These are all really solid, kind of hard rock, great Rush songs, great riffing, everything that you would like from Rush, at least early Rush anyways. And then Then you've got Fly By Night and Making Memories, which to me are very similar in a lot of ways. They both have that kind of poppy feel to them. Fly By Night more of a radio-friendly one than Making Memories, but I've always liked both of these tracks for their poppy kind of catchiness and the vocal parts, and I love the lyrics as well. So that album was great for me. And then the third album, Caress of Steel, I like even, well, maybe I don't like it as much as Fly By Night, but it's close. It's a masterpiece, one of the two here. This has a lot of interesting sounds to it. Bastille Day, of course, would fall very well on Fly By Night, go very well there. Lakeside Park is probably still my favorite Rush song. It's been my favorite Rush song for decades now. I've never really challenged myself to think of any other song that I would like more. The Necromancer, of course, another kind of one of those epic, their second kind of epic middle range kind of stuff. They do a lot of those 8 to 12 minute songs. This one is one of them. The main reason I like the Necromancer so much is because they're talking about Willowdale and the River Dawn, and I lived in those areas, and I know what that feels like. I can almost picture them going down the valley. Just a great tune with some real heavy stuff in it, and some familiarity, of course. So there, and then of course the epic sidelong song, Fountain of Lamnath, or Lamnath if you prefer. Lots of good stuff here. Parts of the suite I like a lot. Panacea, Bacchus Plateau, those are two of my favorite suites by Rush. Dictates and Narpets, that's the drum part. It's a little bit different, kind of a standoffish where there's nothing else going on but that. And yeah, I really like this particular. It may be my favorite of the album side tracks by Rush. I know I'm going to take some heat for that because of 2112, but it's just everybody's different. That's my take on it. I like this a lot. Rush had a great year that year, putting out Fly By Night and Caress of Steel. And so for me, those are the three bands we're doing for today's, or that's the band we're doing, and those are the three albums we're doing for today's Near Perfect Start. So their first three albums, Rush's first three albums, Rush, Fly By Night, Caress of Steel. That's the first three studio albums by Rush, and they come in here on the first episode of Near Perfect Sides. So we have 5 more episodes to do, and I have chosen all the bands. I'm quite happy with who I chose. It was difficult to decide on a couple of things mostly for the last one, this one. Everything else was pretty obvious to me how that was going to go, but this was the only one that I wasn't sure about, but I ultimately decided to include Rush because they're Rush. So anyways, I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Please hit the like and subscribe and the notification bell above my head. And if you want, you can put any comments about this episode, or if you want to put your favorite 3, you can do that, or your favorite band and its 3 first studio albums in the comment section. You can do that as well. And I'm hoping I'll feel better tomorrow so that I can get back to my normal routine. And we'll see you then. Take care and have a good one. Goodbye.